All right, welcome. I have to figure out what is going on with my Zoom. You guys there? Welcome, welcome.
Where are you? You're a black.
You know what, this happened last time as well, and I don't understand why it's happening. But when I'm going from StreamYard, look, I can make myself appear by just going to the FaceTime camera. There we go.
There you go. That's
except it's there. I don't know what is going on. It's weird. And look at the image in the background. It's Jan Zlotnick.
You know, I'd take off that handsome background image if I were you. We like you the way you are. Or is that the way you plan to age?
I have no idea what I'm doing. It's quite clear. But yeah, the weirdest thing is that for the last couple of days, when I go from StreamYard to Zoom, it just, the actual Logitech camera goes dark.
You were blurry today a lot, Joseph.
I heard.
Stefanie looked great, but you were blurry most of the show. A couple times you cleared up, but check into that. We don't like you blurry.
I will have to check into it. I saw myself fine. Stefanie, how was it with you? Like, could you see me clearly?
No, you were a little blurry. There's a little.
And conceptually blurry, mentally blurry is one thing. We've learned to deal with that. But visually blurry, you want to work on that. It's the first time it's happened. So you always do something new, Joseph. You find a new way to use the technology. Hey, Joey.
Hey, Joey. I'm glad Stefanie looked good, though, because I was wondering if it's like upload speeds and download speeds, and I thought we were going to lose power today. I almost emailed you, Stefanie, to say there's a chance we might lose power.
Oh.
Wind is howling here in the Northeast.
Wind is howling here too in North Carolina. And Stefanie, I took notes and I get excited. They turn yellow and red. So a lot of yellow and red today.
Wow, I love it. My goodness.
In honor of Jan, I want to, in his new book title, I want to ask Stefanie 23 questions, but I think I'll cut it down to just one or two. Joseph's frozen. Joseph, unfreeze me.
No,
come back.
No, I'm fine. Don't worry about me.
Should we start talking about substantive things, or just continue to talk about you, Joseph? What do you think?
I'm just in the background here. This is Stefanie's show.
Stefanie, we're like a big family here, so we rib each other a lot. I wanted to ask you this. You made a comment early on that showed a knowledge of Stoic philosophy distinctions, that distinction between what we can control and what we can't control, which was at the core of Seneca and Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius and all those folks in the ancient world. And I started to wonder whether resilience in a person's life can take different forms at different times if there's increasing mastery. And what I mean is this. Early on, if you become good at resilience, you become good at bouncing back from any fall. But if you become even better, you become good at bouncing back higher from any fall. So you bounce higher than where you were, not just returning to where you were. And then when you get even better, you don't fall as often or as far. And then when you get even better, perhaps you don't fall at all. Because you've learned to reconceptualize trouble as a resource. Like this phrase in Marcus Aurelius that one of my friends used for the title of one of his books, The Obstacle is the Way.
Yes.
You know, for what may be an obstacle to trip over in some people's lives becomes totally different in the life of a master of resilience, so that you almost glide over the potholes that make other people fall. You have this inner strength that your various stages of resilience have led you to. Does that resonate at all with you, or am I just making that all up?
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful way to think about growing in your resilience. And I'll preface it with, I don't mean to reference the Stoics, but I think I've been listening to too many Tim Ferriss podcasts lately.
Yeah, I think he likes the Stoics, like Ryan Holiday and a lot of other people.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm with you. I think like the ultimate form of resilience is probably closer to Eckhart Tolle's, you know, complete detached with love. And it's not even that you bounce anymore, but instead you're almost like Neo in the Matrix. And it's like, I don't even have to jump. I don't even have to get hit. I just choose to jump right over that. And it's, you know, someone who's ultimately resilient, I think has a level of detachment from this world that helps them stay way more neutral than, you know, that person that their day completely flies off the handle because they get a shitty email. Two complete different opposite spectrums. I never thought about it from that perspective before, but those do seem to be the levels to progress. So
they do.
Love it.
And that detachment, there's a deeply paradoxical thing about it. Because on the one hand, it seems to be something we should aspire to, and it's found not only in Stoicism but in Buddhist philosophy, in a lot of strands of Hindu thought. It's found in many world wisdom traditions. Sort of aspire to that detachment so that things just slide by you. You're not wounded by anything. And then there's the other side of the paradox, whereby it's precisely our wounding that gives us our superpowers. Look at every superhero story. It starts with something bad. You know, your home planet blows up. You're sent as a child to a place you know nothing about, or you're bitten by a spider, or there's a radioactive experience, right? Your wounding always leads to your superpower. So the sooner we become detached, the more we free ourselves from the very wounding that could create great depth and spiritual insight in us. So there seems to be a balance. And we're often talking on this after show about harmony. There seems to be a balance between seeking for that detachment and yet using all those things along the way for spiritual growth and strengthening and the endowment of powers that you need. So that's probably why people don't get this detachment too soon in their lives, because it's like jumping over a lot of growth and a lot of necessary stuff, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just babbling, but it kind of makes sense.
And here's where my brain goes. So here's where I first encountered it. So I come from a family of alcoholics. With alcoholics come a system of codependency. And so my natural go-to for most of my life was codependency. And so talking to my therapist in my 20s and early 30s about how to detach from people, because I thought I could control everyone's emotional response if I could just control everything. And so that's where I learned it from her, was around detach with love. And the first time I heard it, I was like, you're insane. Like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. And I'm not sure that I aim for detachment because of that vulnerability piece. I think, I'm sure paradoxically, vulnerability and detachment go together in some amazing, powerful way that I just don't understand yet. But yeah, I feel like I struggle on both sides of those, is like how to be vulnerable, like, you know, singing a song in front of lots of people on the internet when you're terrible at it, but then also detaching from the emotional reaction of other people's emotions. It's, I'm probably not a mentor in this area. It's something I struggle with every single day as well.
Maybe it's a measure of detachment that allows you to be vulnerable. Those who aren't detached, who care too much about what others think and who care too much about results, usually keep themselves from being vulnerable because they're afraid of the consequences. And I put into the chat at some point, it's like fear is one among many voices in our heads, but we give it a microphone and a huge PA system and a sound and a light show, right? More than it deserves. It's like if there's a poisonous snake at my feet, I thank fear for making me jump back, but it intrudes in our lives far too often, and detachment helps keep it from doing that.
Tom, I saw earlier today a teacher had posted the times table for 1 times, and the first one, I'll do the first 3. 1 times 7 is 9. No, 1 times 9 is 7. Sorry. 2 times 9 is 18. 3 times 9 is 27. And she went through the list. And as she's writing them on the board, the kids are laughing in the classroom. And she pointed out the fact that, isn't it interesting that of all the things you could have celebrated, the other 9 equations that I got right, but yet what we did was we focused on the negative and I see that happen a lot, and it's changed the way I try to put out information and put out energy like that, because it's much more fun to celebrate a friend's success than
Yeah.
for me anyway, than it is to, you know, cut them down for, hey, you got a typo in your post or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Point out
So,
all the things they're doing
Right.
wrong. Ugh.
Right.
and of course we do that to ourselves, I
Oh, we
think,
do all the
to a certain
time.
extent, right? So I try to point it back at myself to make sure that I don't forget that I do have contributions, that it does make a difference, that you know, positive things do come out of the work that I do. Yes, every once in a while I don't punctuate a sentence properly, or even worse, but I can't focus on those things and let it drag me down. I've
Mm.
got to just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's almost like a focus on the negative, a sensitivity to the negative is, and always has been, a survival mechanism. And it can be a tool for excellence, because those of us who are self-corrective, who realize our flaws and correct them, we make progress toward excellence, as long as it doesn't become an inhibitor
Mhm.
of both survival and excellence, right? So as the Greeks used to say, very few things have intrinsic value, intrinsically good or intrinsically bad. This ability to notice the negative, or proclivity to notice the negative, it's a tool. How does it function in our lives? That's the whole answer. Do we use it well, or does it use us badly? Are we in charge, or is it in charge? You know, that's the old conundrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think, Stefanie, first of all, thank you for a great session.
Yeah, it really was.
Thank you.
I put the hashtag, I'm going to watch this
Felt
one
like,
again or something.
yeah, I was encouraged to jump out that plane. And Joey Dumont, who's here, he and I had the pleasure and honor of being on this thing called SEALs Team Leader. It was a leadership for business, but it was led by a Navy SEALs commander. And he told the story that I think I've told here, but a long time ago, of being on the plane in which they were to jump out and parachute and do maneuvers. And his own commander, his own leader of that team, up at whatever 20,000 feet or whatever, was the most frightened person of jumping that there ever was. And he expressed the, not just admiration, but the the confidence that he had in his leader, because he jumped with fear. Whereas this leader of the group who we got to know, Larry said he had no fear. He was one of those guys who almost sociopathically didn't have that fear gene. So jumping out wasn't a big deal, really. But his leader, who had 30,000 jumps when they went for his first, still threw up before jumping. And he never got over that. And it made me realize that vulnerability, or maybe it's not vulnerability, it's that emotion that he had and overcame in order to jump, and then to lead others to jump. I'd rather have that guy as a leader.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be in an army of fighters, if it came to fighting, of people who were like that, rather than were missing the fear gene, even though I might lose.
Yeah, no, right. That's very sensible. I mean, philosophers have talked about emotion at its best is cognitive. It registers the nature of a situation. If in a well-trained mind, to be in a frightening situation and experience no fear is to get the facts wrong. So there is a cognitive, intellectual side of emotion when it's working properly. And then, though, there's a matter of the will. There's not just the cognition. There's what philosophers call conation, or the will. It's up to you what you're going to do with that. So I totally agree with you, Jan. I would rather be in a dangerous situation surrounded by people who feel proper fear, and then who know what to do with it.
Joseph loves it when we do such great work as we're doing today, because it lets him sit in the background and do his show notes and
Yeah, he's ordering a pizza right now. Deep
Oh
in-
no, I think he's much more productive than that.
Theoretical
I'm
thought.
actually meant to be participating on some Twitter chat, so which I'm like not even sure if it's going on. So I'm like I'm listening to you guys. I will take that as an opportunity to talk,
Good.
which is when my name is mentioned. That's permission. It's very Pavlovian. But I think the word that Stefanie said right at the beginning, which is a key. I mean, she said some amazing things about, again, what it is, what it isn't. I mean, this was like a dissertation in a blurry hour, apparently. But the word control is the key word right at the beginning,
Mhm.
and and it is the number one, problem and challenge with the corporation. It's trying to control and manage and overmanage and over control, and so many of the things are out of our control. And I think the letting go and the share and control, the whole key is in that C word, is in that word control. There's no doubt.
And if I can say so, Stefanie, you said two things today that qualify you as the next Oracle at Delphi. You said resilience doesn't demand answers from uncertainty. I thought that was gold. And Joseph likes the quote from the Seinfeld episodes. That's gold, Jerry. That's just gold. And you said right after that, another thing that was oracular in its goldness. You said driven people look for meaning too soon. And I just thought that was amazingly insightful.
That was amazing.
We need to be able to sit with situations of trouble and uncertainty and the unknown and challenge. We need to be able to sit with those situations without rushing to find meaning, because the first meaning we find won't usually be the right one.
Yeah.
And that can just get us all off track. Whereas if we're just able to be, again, detached, if we're able to be a bit detached and just wait, be patient, wait for the meaning to appear, to arise,
Yes.
the puzzle pieces, as you said, to fit together, we're in much better shape following that path than bulling ahead, making meaning where there is none, or settling for a faux or counterfeit meaning that precedes the true significance of the situation had we just waited. So that was great. That was great. So you're our oracle today.
Oh, that warms my little heart that meant so much to you. Thank you.
Thank you again for, like Jan said, this was great. It was cool to watch and hear everything you had to say. I'm a big Eckhart Tolle fan, so when you brought that to the floor, I just wanted to comment specifically as it relates to detachment. So as someone who's been a student of philosophy and theology and spirituality for about 20 years now, I think detachment around pain is misnomer, because part of what he teaches you and Buddha teaches you and Krishna teaches you is that you need to accept the pain, and that if you accept the pain, then you don't suffer. And there's the big difference between the two, right?
Yes.
So allow it to happen. Be the awareness that watches it, right? And then as you see the pain, you can say, oh, okay, this really hurt. And you can either cry, or you can go work out, or you can take a walk, but you're actually going to react you're going to respond to that situation as opposed to reacting. And as someone who historically reacted badly to anything, because I also grew up in an alcoholic family, and so my reactions were visceral and usually violent because that's how I was treated. And so my first reaction is to punch somebody, and that was obviously the wrong reaction. So it's one of those things where if you can get when stuff does happen, and when it happens, it's not if it happens, when bad things happen to you.
Yeah.
If you can have the detachment of self, watching, being the awareness of the situation, allowing yourself to feel the pain, then the suffering ends. And I think that's the big piece for me with Eckhart. And that's my 2 cents for the day. So I just wanted to say that.
Yes. Yeah. I've left Eckhart a long time ago. I haven't revisited his books in a while, but yeah, that difference between suffering and pain. Oh, I will tell you, I've spent numerous months over the past 2.5 years, like just suffering because I couldn't let it go. Like I just could not let the anger go. And from the foster care situation, being left so powerless and watching these poor little boys get traumatized. And it was, that's the time that I wish I could have back. Like I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to hurt bad, but the holding onto the anger part was the bad part for me.
Something that's helped me in that regard is, and it comes from practicing mindfulness, where you're asked to pause before reacting when you're in a stressful situation.
Yeah.
Is I like to think of the dramatic example of Neo. You brought up The Matrix, where because I'm a writer and creative guy, and if I were dealing in this concept visually, I like the idea of Neo and The Matrix, where when he was in a fight, if you remember, many times, it's not always, everything slowed down to slow motion, and the bullets were coming at him, or knives were coming at him in slow motion, and it gave him time to make his move. And when I think about what I would normally do, which is the words, the expression, the violence, the whatever is coming at me, it's coming at you at rapid speed if you let it. And so then you react at rapid speed, like Joe and you were talking about from childhood, and it's not effective. You're hurt by it and you're suffering by it. And when you slow it down, which I think you might comment more expertly on this, but I think the lesson here is, if I'm slowing it down, I'm simply I'm simply experiencing the environment. I'm hearing the words, I'm putting it in context and perspective, and I might just let it blow by me. I might just move my head a bit and it goes right by me, and then lift my head back and, hey, you know what? It's already gone.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree completely. I've just had a couple of instances this year where my business has grown tremendously, and I've had those business problems that you don't hit to a certain level. And I'm like, in my initial reaction to it, where I'm like, I get angry and frustrated. I'm like, I can't believe he just said this thing to me. And then when I take a deep breath and like picture the Neo situation where he literally stops the bullets right in front of him, and they drop. I'm a Gen Xer. I can't help myself with that movie, but I'm unbelievably grateful to have those problems. I'm like, when it was me and I made a big $55,000 a year in the company that I ran, like I didn't have any of these problems. And now I'm big enough, I get these problems. I'm unbelievably grateful for them. So that's been my mantra this year, is like, thank God for these problems.
Perspective is at the core of most wisdom. And it's like Joseph mentioned a few minutes ago, being on Twitter. And Joey mentioned, the reaction of punching somebody out. Well, we've been living through a political time in our culture where everybody's been verbally punching everybody else out. And he mentions Twitter. You're in a Twitter discussion with somebody and they say something insulting or something stupid, and you feel like you have to answer them instantly, as if you're preventing a bomb from going off. There are only so many seconds you have, or this bomb is going to go off. You've got to tweet back and show them the falsehood of their statement or the error of their ways. And what a crazy way to live that we kind of, as a society, devolved into over the past year or so.
Yes.
I want to ask a question about resilience. Someone asked me at the beginning of this, I think right after COVID started, to think of one word that described me. And the word that popped in my mind, and I really never thought about it, was resilience. And it was interesting that since then, it's like I have it printed out on a piece of paper. It's on my desk, it's next to my monitors. And I think historically I've been that way, but I never really acknowledged it. And I'm wondering if is there natural resilience, or is it something we have to really think about and work on all the time? Or do people just intuitively have some of this? Or because you teach a master class, and I guess it's just like, what are the things that you need to teach or bring forward, or like tell people you actually have a lot of it. You haven't given it a name. I guess that's my point. I think I have a lot of it. I've been through a lot. And I can totally understand when my business started to grow dramatically. I went from loving it to feeling like I was, all of a sudden it was managing me. I wasn't enjoying my work as much. But but are there things that are, it's like, when do we, how do we call it out? How do we like recognize it in ourselves? Maybe when maybe we use different words, or I don't know. It's a word that I use a lot, never used before. I guess that's the point. I don't know why I didn't recognize it, or there's words we should have been looking for that we would have recognized it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am finding that the word resilience is kind of a secret word. And I'm like, everyone needs to know what this word is. So is resilience innate or is it developed? There's a couple of different arguments you could make for both. So I would tend towards probably the stronger it is, the more developed it is, like a good muscle. But for those of you who are into, and bear with me, I'm going to butcher this. Has anybody heard of, is it epigenetics, where we believe that the memories of our mothers are with us because we were in our grandmother's uteruses, in our grandmother's ovaries, right? And so there's this notion that her memories are our memories as well. And so there are some characteristics that come over from generations because of that. I know it's a questionable science, but it's something that I've been digging into lately for myself, and have found to have some truth to it, or some resonancy to it. And so you might have some more innate resilience because your grandmother and your mother carried things with them in their experience that were passed along to you in the womb. So I am no expert on that. I just offer up some Stefanie Krievins logic.
I think, Stefanie, that's a wise approach. Our starting points can be different in life, but that doesn't prevent our endpoints being reflective of that. I got to know, when I was 39, I got to know Norman Lear pretty well, the famous old TV producer, when he was 69 at the time. So he's in his 90s now. But he said to me one day, he said, Tom, there are two kinds of people in the world, wet people and dry people. He said, dry people are brittle. They break very easily. Wet people are sponges and they flex. And he said, he went on to say a lot more about this, but his view was you're kind of born one or the other, and yet you can do something about that. You can develop the other characteristics. Look, he's got his button.
Gold, Terry, it's gold. Wet versus dry people.
So question. So Leslie, which are you? Which one have you, where did you get your resilience from?
Well, as soon as you mentioned grandmother's womb, my grandmother was an immigrant from Russia, came over in a hull of a ship, and, an Orthodox Jew. So they separated the men and women. Wow. And she with her mother, her father was a rabbi. So I remember her telling stories about how they led the prayer, the services, Rosh Hashanah services for the women and the whole ship, because I'm separate from the men, and they never saw any sun. It was if you watch the Titanic, kind of the story was, and so here's a family that left Russia, pogroms, and came to the United States, and so there's a lot of, and then my mother had a very interesting story also, growing up as her mother, my grandmother, divorced. Women didn't get divorced when they were, this is the other story. I told you I had two grandmothers, very interesting stories. One I wrote about, which will be published next week. This one, she got divorced in an Orthodox community where women were dissed for that, taking that, and never got a divorce, Jewish get, which is the Jewish, so she couldn't remarry. So they lived through all these really traumatic things and survived and did quite well. In fact, my mother was interesting for you. Her specialty, she was a social worker specialized in adoption for children that were hard to place. And that was her specialty. And she was also an open adoption specialist. And so she spent, so it's just, a lot of stuff that you said. As soon as you said it, I'm like rushing these memories of my grandmother and my mother, of the stories I heard from my grandmother and everything about, I guess it's been part of me. It just never thank you for saying that, because I want to look into this. So I never even thought of where it came from. Just knew I had it. I never even thought of the word until recently.
There was a British guy who kind of researching on, rat behavior and stuff like that. If one generation learns how to solve a maze real quickly, it seems that the subsequent generations just kind of naturally know how to solve that maze. So there is some evidence that things are inherited. And with respect to resilience, when we remember that we are the results of untold generations of survivors who came through every kind of difficulty imaginable and difficulties we can't even imagine. The chances that we've inherited some kind of resiliency dormant and latent in us is fairly high. I mean, my wife has been tracing back her ancestry, not even using ancestry.com or anything, but just doing it herself. And she's found her family back as far as 1300.
Whoa.
And the guy in 1300 was a lord who owned a castle in England, and he was knighted. And I told her, I bet my relatives knew your relatives and stole their horses. I mean, I'm sure that's the kind of background I came from, but nonetheless, they were all survivors. And I think that's really relevant to our confidence we can have about becoming more resilient in our own lives.
Hey, Stefanie, is there have you come across in your training and in your teaching that sometimes people can have a misconception about resilience? And where it occurs to me, I could misunderstand it, and I have in the past, is, let's say, for example, when I was at journalism school at Northwestern, and I went through the first course, and I was unsure whether I wanted to go the rest of the way because I had to plunk down the entirety of the balance of my grandfather's inheritance. Now, I felt a great responsibility toward that money, and I wasn't sure if this is really what I wanted to do with it.
Yep.
And I also knew that I was one of only like 15 chairs in that room that had the privilege of being in that class. And I was with my friends, and I told them, you know, I feel uncomfortable about quitting, but my heart's not in it anymore. And they had to guide me away from this sense of quitting and not being resilient to taking a different path, you know?
Yes.
And if they had gone the other way and said, hey, you got to be resilient and stick with it, now maybe it would have worked out too. But, you know, so how do you view that?
Yeah. So what I teach my clients to do in that situation is you have to one, know where your intuition comes from and how it speaks to you. And only your intuition gives you that answer in that moment. Because quitting isn't always bad. I've learned that the hard way myself, because I'm a pile driver, right? Just like go, 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 go. You're exhausted, keep going another mile. And so I've had to learn that. But what I advise my clients to do is you have to listen to your intuition. It's the only thing that knows the right and real answer. You have to break free from it's either or, but life is both and, right? Just because you leave journalism school doesn't mean that you'll never not be in journalism somehow. We just don't know what that is yet. But and I also believe that God speaks to us through our intuition, and he guides us on the right path where we're supposed to be. I don't tell my clients that because that's irrelevant what I believe, but our intuition is the only thing that knows the right answer. But too many people wrap up fear, insecurity, other people's expectations on top of their intuition. You have to know yourself in order to separate out those two voices.
Know yourself is the
intuition. Yeah.
Stefanie, just
and trust yourself. And trust yourself.
Yeah.
We're a little over. I normally keep these to 30 minutes, but I just wanted to ask you one final question. The guys, everyone has just been so engaged with you because of you. But my question is, it's funny because I really think we are soulmates in the sense that I was to this person who just did not fit in a corporate environment. In fact, I kind of just withered and died in these political situations. I hated them so much. But it's funny because here you are now training these teams to do better, but yet they're still in the corporate situation. So how do you find that bridge or reconcile that bridge, which is you're now dealing with people who either are employees or are not, but they haven't found their voice to escape yet, to have to deal with all those politics where, you know, the perception is reality, and 3, are not really rewarded or incentivized for speaking their mind. So now it's almost like an impossible situation because now you've been hired to help them deal with that stuff, but that stuff is still inherently there.
Yeah. So a few different layers there. So one is on the personal side, people need to make sure that they have their life and their personal finances in a place where they can be brave at work And what I mean by that is, don't get more mortgage than you can afford. Don't get all the debt that the bank will give you, because then you become a slave to your job. You're afraid of everything for your mortgage payment. So you've got to make sure on your personal side, you have your finances lined up so that you have some economic freedom there should something happen. You know, you all have seen the stats in America. They're staggering. Most Americans are a week, 2 weeks away from missing their mortgage payment. So you've got to get that piece of it right on the personal side. In the workplace side, what I hear that often manifests as they blame the top leadership for why the culture is. Now, top leadership creates the culture. That's absolutely true. But you participate in it by replicating their bad behaviors, by gossiping, by not speaking up, and by telling yourself that no one wants to hear you. So I give them the tools to respectfully bring up tough issues, because most of the time, it's not the fact that they're speaking up. That's not the problem. And that was my problem. It was the way that I was doing it was the problem. You have to learn how to speak up so that you celebrate the good, but then also bring up other possibilities for how something could make it even better. You hear that language? I have a suggestion to make your idea even better. Versus, I don't think we should do that. You know what we should do? My idea. Most people speak from such an egocentric perspective that they communicate in a fairly offensive and brash way. I used to be there myself, total admission. So employees really have to reshape how they show up. And in some ways, you have to refuse to participate in the politics. Just opt out of it. Just find ways to be, I don't want to use the word authentic because in some ways it's overused now, but you've got to find a way to stop wearing all those masks at work, to stop being so phony at work and then complaining that everybody else is phony. And so unfortunately, the hard work is you have to put yourself out there first. You have to do the hard work first. If you don't trust people, your work is to trust people first. You have to take the first step, and usually people will start modeling your way because it's much more inviting than the other ways that you're seeing. Not right away, but you got to stick with it. But you blaming the CEO for why you're a bitch at work, unacceptable.
I sat through the whole show just for that. That was awesome. That was great.
Yeah.
That got a little too unfiltered. My apologies.
Oh, no, it's perfect. Yeah, we've got to fix that thing.
Well, the problem is this is the actual sound from the show, and this is a trend. And this is listen. I will take any sound editing if you can strip out the last.
I'll take care of it. I'll help you out.
But thank you, man. But yeah, no. Listen, that was gold, Stefanie. You should have the final word today. And I think from wet to dry people, from this idea of don't blame the culture. You're part of it, so change it. Amazing stuff. Let me give you the quick disclaimer here. There's no disclaimer, but the invitation, which is I'll send you an email shortly that will thank you and give you some links.